Well, hello, welcome to VLGA Connect, brought to you by Hunt and Hunt Lawyers. Good to have you with us. Each week here at this time, we bring you news from around the sector and talk to special guests about current issues of interest. I just have the one guest today. We'll spend a bit of time with the Mayor of Yarra, Stephen Jolly, on his first mayoral term, responding to criticism and why he won't be seeking another term as Mayor. That's coming up in just a little while. But first, let's check out the latest Connect news headlines. Moorabool Shire Council is facing a $500,000 clean-up bill after a Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal ruling yesterday. The VCAT decision requires the council to remove harmful industrial waste illegally dumped on council-managed land, despite claims the EPA had been monitoring the dumper without taking action. Mayor Paul Tatchell said it was completely unfair that ratepayers should foot the bill, which amounts to around $25 for each ratepayer in the Shire. Banyule Council says it shares community concerns about blue discoloration of Banyule Creek at Rosanna. EPA Victoria and Melbourne Water have been leading an investigation and response to the issue. They've confirmed that the bright blue pollutant is from dust suppressant used in the North East Link Road construction. Earlier, it was ruled out that council drains were the source of the pollution. Sean Turner, a street sweeper dismissed by Darebin Council for questioning the use of an acknowledgement of country in a team meeting, has received a compensation payout after the Fair Work Commission ruled his dismissal was unfair. And now it's been revealed the 61-year-old is considering a career in federal politics. Tawong Shire Council will lead a community rally in Corryong in support of a single-site regional hospital. Mayor Andrew Whitehead said the council remains gravely concerned about the planned redevelopment of the existing Albury Hospital, arguing it won't meet future capacity needs for the region's growing population of 300,000. Hume Council has rejected sensational and misleading claims in media reports about its call for more enforcement powers relating to dangerous dogs. The council is calling on the state government to change animal control laws to allow council officers to enter properties where there is a reasonable belief that a dog involved in a serious attack is being kept. A council review found that while officers followed proper procedures in recent cases, their response was limited by current legislation requiring police presence in urgent situations. There have been two separate media reports this week questioning the level of funding for integrity agencies. The Herald Sun reported claims of underfunding of the local government inspectorate, which have meant a number of positions have gone unfilled, and the Australian has revealed that government underfunding of the Victorian Ombudsman's office has led to a number of important projects either being scaled back or cancelled altogether. And a by-election to fill a vacancy on Wodonga Council has been set. Postal ballots will go out from the 15th of September, with voting closing on Friday the 3rd of October. The by-election is needed to replace former councillor Hannah Seymour, who recently resigned her position on the council. That's the latest from VLGA Connect News. Keep up to date with regular episodes of the Local Government News Roundup podcast every Monday, Wednesday and Friday, brought to you by the VLGA. Regularly on this program, we like to catch up with civic leaders around the state, and we've got one today that probably doesn't need a lot of introduction. He's been in the news a bit of late. It's the Mayor of the Yarra City Council, Stephen Jolly. Great to meet you, Stephen, and welcome to the program.
Thanks, Chris. Pleasure to be here.
You've had, as I said, quite a bit of attention since you were elected mayor last year, but you've been around local government for a long time. Why do you think it took a couple of decades for you to become the mayor of Yarra?
Well, I mean, originally I was elected as a socialist. I represented, I was a member of the Socialist Party, and that was like a bit of a fringe thing in Australian politics. So I was sort of like leader of the opposition for a long time on the council, for 20 years to be precise. But about 4 or 5 years ago, I've shifted to being an independent. And prior to the election last October, I hooked up with community leaders throughout the City of Yarra. It's quite an engaged area politically. And we stood as sort of a loose alliance of independents. We tagged it sort of Yarra for all. And we won a majority of the 6 of the 9 seats at the election. And I suppose that's the most experienced of the 6 independents. The other 5 that were elected were all new councillors, first-term councillors, or are all first-term councillors. So we've... then I was asked to be mayor, and it was in that capacity that I became mayor. I always felt that it would be pointless for me to be mayor if I didn't have a political working majority for the type of things that I wanted to do locally. Otherwise, it would just be like the Queen Mother in the UK. Do you know what I mean? You had lots of
Yeah.
prestige or whatever, but actually no power.
Yeah.
And the whole point of politics is to affect change, and you can't do that if you don't have a working majority for what you want to do. But we do now, and
Yeah.
that's why we've been able to do quite a lot in the last 6 or 7 months.
During that 2 decades before you became mayor, was this something that you were aspiring to, or did you think it was out of your reach?
I thought it was out of my reach because of I did never thought that like somebody with my political sort of ideology would ever get a majority in a council in the state of Victoria. I just thought that was ridiculous. So I just saw myself as the community's rep on the council rather than the council's rep in the community. So I represented. I mean, we have, as you know, probably Chris, in the city of Yarra, even though it's a small municipality, it's only 19 square kilometres, 100,000 odd people. It's politically quite rich. You know, it's the inner northern suburbs. It's got, I mean, for example, right throughout the 20th century, it was controlled by the Labor Party, the council. It's, lots and lots of labor movement history in the 20th century, in particular in this area. It's where the Green Party in Australia were spawned. The very first councillor, the Green councillor elected anywhere on this continent was in 2001, Gurum Sekon in North Fitzroy. And then we had 4 Greens out of 9 elected in 2003. And then the first Green Council in 2020, like dominant, like totally majority Green Council. We've got a huge history of, urban First Nations activism in Yarra, the highest percentage of public housing of any municipality in Victoria. So we've got a big sort of African community, Chinese community, Vietnamese community. We've got 5 times the state average of same-sex marriages. So it's sort of like become the center of the LGBTI QA plus community. So all the nightclubs are here, where back in the day they were mainly down in South Yarra, they're now in Yarra. So it's sort of an area in a nutshell where the minorities are the majority. So I just was sort of like a representative of those people on the council, leading community campaigns and trying to pressure the council to not do bad things and to do some good things over the last 20 years.
Some lament the politicisation of local government, and it's certainly grown a lot more in recent years, but it sounds like a lot of that has emanated out of communities like yours. What do you say to those that say politics shouldn't have a place in local government?
Well, everything is political, and you're either open about it or it's just under the table. So when somebody says to me, I am a politician, but I'm actually not political, I always hold on to my wallet straight away. I always think, well, that's a bit shifty, because everything that we do in politics, like everything we do in council, has got some political overtone. So, for example, planning, one of the, notwithstanding the fact that the state government have been sort of reducing council's planning powers, it's one of the biggest powers you have as a council and as a councillor and as a mayor. That is extremely political, because you've got different perspectives on planning. Some people want no growth, some people want unchecked growth, some people want growth, but also not to forget about people on lower incomes. You've got the state pressure, you've got development pressure. In the CBD, you've got the union pressure, you've got resident pressure. So those things they're political, and we're just a bit more honest about it, I guess, or a bit more open about it. I'm not saying anyone's dishonest, but we're a bit more open about it. But I do have to say that the vast majority of councillors, in my observation, put their values first, and often at times don't follow the party line. So, but I don't think we're any less or more political than any other council. It's just a little bit more explicit and open here.
Yeah, yeah. So since you've been elected, you've been pretty quick to effect some change. That's attracted some criticism. I want to ask you about that very first meeting with the omnibus motion of 30-something points that some people have suggested perhaps was a blunt instrument at the time, but I've read that you don't resile from having done that. Can you just talk us through why you took that approach?
Well, I think there was a lot of cynicism in Yarra towards the council. they believed the previous council was out of touch with community needs and was, literally telling them how to live their lives. I mean, one silly example was when they ran a campaign to get everybody to eat plant-based diet. But in actual fact, the councillor meals prior to council meetings, it was full of steaks and pork chops and and that's sort of like, it's just it's symbolic of how the locals thought the council was out of touch. So we took advantage of the election win and the enthusiasm of the fact that the independents had taken over the council to, in one foul swoop, implement the program that we stood on in the election. It wasn't like it was 26 points to be precise, but it wasn't anything new. It were all things that we'd ran on in the election campaign collectively, the independents. And people said to us, your political opponents say you're going too fast, but everyone in the community are going, it's about time people actually implemented their program rather than getting elected and then just started making up excuses why their program cannot be implemented. Oh, it's much harder than we thought it was going to be, blah, blah, blah. So we brought it in. We didn't breach any Local Government Act regulations because we asked for reports on those 26 things. While I know that for an absolute fact that the LGI and the minister looked at us very closely, there was nothing that we did that was in breach of any act. Otherwise, hell and brimstone would have come on top of us. You can rest assured of that. And over the course of the last 4 or 5 months, we've implemented those 26 points, and it's led to, I believe, a lot of community support for this current council. Hopefully that lasts, but who knows? And that's sort of why we did what we did.
I was going to ask you about progress on implementing those. So all of that has been put in place now? That's pretty quick.
Yeah, pretty much so. I mean, there might be one or two minor things, but like the key points, which was to turn the council around to supporting business, to turn the council around to supporting housing initiatives, to turn the council around to away from non-council issues and onto the issues that people are concerned about. I think we've done, like in the first meeting, we dealt with the e-scooter issue. We ended the Abbotsford trial, where one small section of Yarra had less or fewer council bin pickups than the rest of the municipality, even though they're paying the same rates. We fast-tracked a whole bunch of sporting projects that had been delayed by the previous council. We brought back democratic rights for residents at meetings, where in the past, if they wanted to ask a question at the council meeting, they had to write the question out in advance. So the officers would have some pat answer prepared in advance. It was all very clinical. Now it's much more democratic. People can just turn up, and as long as they, observe basic common decency, they can ask any question that they want. And then moving on, we capped the bin tax, or the waste charges, I should say, as most people would understand them, to the level of rates. I mean, look, to be honest with you, you only have to just Google and you'll see. I mean, we're in the paper, as you say, almost every week, but we've implemented all those 26 points. And the people who say we went too fast are the people who lost the election. So they're going to say that. But the people, if any of your listeners or viewers don't believe me, they just have to ring any of their friends or family that live in Yarra and say, what do you think of the new council? And they'll go, you know what? They're not perfect, but at least they're doing what they said they were going to do. And I can live with that.
Yeah, fair enough. Some of that media, one headline, I've just revisited a story the Herald Sun ran that said you were reshaping Melbourne's wokest council and talked about comparisons between you and Donald Trump. How do you respond to those?
I get what they're coming from, in the sense that we try to concentrate on what unites us rather than what divides us. Often, like historically, I have raised issues that some people would describe as woke, some people would describe them as non-council. So, for example, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago, Yarra Council, and I actually seconded the motion, raised for the first time the whole question of Australia Day actually being Invasion Day. We've raised many, many local, national, and sometimes even international issues on the council, and I've been part of that. But the problem is when people do that as an excuse not to do their job and to try and distract from the fact that they're not actually doing their job as councillors. The real job of a councillor is to do the basics that you're elected to do. I'm not elected to be the Foreign Minister of Australia or even the Premier of Victoria. I'm elected to be a local councillor. If you do that right, you can also raise general issues. So I do not resolve from the fact that we can't just stick to the 3 Rs, if you like. To do your job properly as a councillor, planning, it's a state issue. Public housing, where we've got heaps of, and the state government want to knock all the towers down, that's a state issue, but we have to stick our nose into that. And there are even sometimes some federal issues that actually are of concern to locals that we will participate in. I guess what we've done is we want to earn the right with the locals to raise non-local issues. When they trust us on the local issues, they'll listen to us on the broader issues, and that's the stepping stone that we have to do. And I think we've rejigged the priorities at council accordingly. So we've got a little bit more respect when we talk about issues that aren't obviously council issues than maybe the previous councils had.
So what's the relationship like with state and federal government? Let's talk state firstly. You've led the charge against the ESVF levy from a metropolitan point of view, and I want to get an update on that from you if you have one. You've been quite vocal about the planning changes, etc. How's the relationship with the state from your perspective?
Well, I mean, structurally in Victoria, as you know better than I do, councils are quite weak. I mean, with this little bit of an exception with the City of Geelong and the City of Melbourne in particular, but it's not like in the UK, let's just say that, for example, where the councils in many areas run the police, run the schools, and even, things that in Australia, it's run by the state government. We, at the drop of a hat, could be closed down tomorrow morning if we did something outrageous by the Minister for Local Government. So that is something that we have to accept, that's just a reality, that councils are structurally weak in Victoria compared to many other areas throughout the advanced Western world. So we treat the state government with respect. We know that they're more powerful than we are. We're not idiots. And where they do good things, we will back them in. So, for example, 2 or 3 weeks ago, they put in a pill testing centre in my ward here in Fitzroy, which is quite controversial. I'm not going to get into that unless you want me to right now, but I backed them in on that. When they said to us 2 or 3 months ago that we want 44,000 new homes built in Yarra as part of your housing target, we said, yeah, no worries. But we want to make sure that at least a section of those 44,000 are for young people on low incomes, on people on the wrong side of the tracks financially, and aren't just for rich people who want to live in the inner city and live in, penthouses. And also, we want to do it in a way that respects the heritage of the area. But we think we can do it. So we're not going to criticize. We're going to back in the government anytime it does something good. And we want them to work with us on the projects that we've got, like this housing project that we as a council are going to do next to Collingwood Town Hall. But we're also not cowards. When they do something that we disagree with, we'll call them out on it. And that's the type of relationship that you would have with anyone that you respect or love in your private life. Where they do something good, you back them in. Where they do something bad, you look in their face and say, listen, Chris, I think you're wrong on this. Listen, Steve, I think you're wrong on that. So we've got a very, very good working relationship. And, we wanted to say to the government when we won the election that we actually want to work with you. And that's why we encouraged the deputy mayor, who's the only Labor Party councillor in the city of Yarra. We said to her, please, can you be the deputy mayor? We didn't have to do that because we had a working majority, but that was well, obviously she's a very talented young woman, but it wasn't just because of that. It was also a message that we wanted to set to state and federal government that we are open for business with you guys. We know we can't do anything without you, and we want to work with you, especially around housing. But if you do something bad to us or other councils, we will not be afraid to call you out. And that's, I suppose, has been the strategy that we've employed in the last 7 months.
What have they said to you about your stand on the Emergency Services Fund levy?
Well, they obviously disagree with us on that. They think it's, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. But I mean, our argument is that it actually is covering up for cuts. Like F4V are going to have over the last 2 years, $114 million cut. It's also going to be cut to 000, but it's hidden behind this new name, which they're saying nothing to see here. We've just changed the name, but in actual fact, they've taken things that are currently funded through consolidated revenue and whacked them on this new levy. So they're double dipping, and the resident will have to double dip. So the fees for your local business, for the local residents, will go up, and the service will actually have a cut. And the councils will have to collect it, which is a cost to them. Knox Council told the Herald Sun it's going to cost them $200,000 to collect the tax. And what we found from legal advice from other councils, and ours is impending, is that if a local chooses only to pay the bit of their rates bill that is that's going to the local town hall, to the local council, and not pay the levy, the council will have to fix the bill. And that's what I've described as, next level gangsterism. I mean, there's not a single debt collection agency in Australia. If somebody owes you money and you employ a debt collection agency and they fail in their task, you still have to pay the debt collection agency, and the debt collection agency doesn't have to put the hands in their pocket and provide you with the money that they failed to be able to get. So councils are going to be really on the back foot with this. And I think a lot of people in the city sort of think, especially in a city where people have got money outside of the public housing estates, they're thinking, oh, maybe it's a good thing because, it's like world peace. Who can argue against money for essential services? And when it's just put like that, you go, well, I don't mind paying a bit extra if it's going to go to, having world-class, 000 and all the rest of it. But in actual fact, it's actually covering for a cut to services. They don't like our position on this, but we haven't done anything illegal, so they can't close us down or anything. But and we probably will have to collect it. But I suppose the intention of my media campaign in the last month has been to ensure that nobody in the City of Yarra, or indeed any resident in Victoria, thinks that their local council or their local mayor is responsible for this. This is a policy that's come out of Spring Street, imposed on the councils. And if you don't like it, you need to complain to Jacinta Allen, not to your local mayor or to your local council.
You say your legal advice is pending. You're still hoping there's some movement there potentially?
Yeah, we are. And we're definitely going to ensure that the rates bill is really clear about what's going to Spring Street and what's going to your local council. But looking at other councils' legal advice that I've had an opportunity to look at, I think it's unlikely it'll be anything other than, listen, you're going to have to suck this up and collect it. And this will have to be combated politically rather than some sort of like 1990s UK poll tax revolt where people just didn't pay the poll tax and that led to the downfall of the Thatcher government back in the day. I don't think that's going to be possible in Victoria. But what we want to do, and there's a big conference on the 26th here in Moonee Ponds, Moonee Valley Racecourse, I should say, of mayors and SES and farmers and so on, is that we're looking for a moratorium on it. It's just there needs to be more discussion. It was done without full input from local councils, from SES volunteers, from farmers, and it's policy on the run. And I know they've got a black hole that they've got to fill, but this is not the way to fill it. And so I think that's probably what we're going to be calling for next. And then next year at the said election, let's just see what happens.
I want to just get a couple of quick comments on issues before we wrap up. You instituted a pretty massive hike on your contract fees with e-scooter operators a few months ago. I think it was, from what was it, about a $1 to $5, wasn't it? $1 to $5 was the fee increase on a daily basis.
That's right.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. When we took the reason for that is that we were subsidizing Uber. Uber own Lime, and the other company was Neuron. They're international, very profitable companies, and our local council, was financing their business operation in the City of Yarra. And we don't do that for any other business in Yarra. No council does it for any business in Victoria. And we had this so-called progressive council bankrolling corporate subsidies or council subsidies to Uber of all people. And we put that to an end. And the only way we said, if you pay us $5 per day, not per trip, but per day, that will break even. But if that's not viable for Uber and Neuron, well, then the council is it our role? It's because it's not a core service. I mean, I like e-scooters and I'd like to have them around as long as they're, managed properly. But it's not a core service of council. And if the only way that we can have e-scooters in the City of Yarra is if we take ratepayers' money and give it to Uber, well, that's not going to happen on my watch. So they pulled a pin on it, but we've now in the process of a new tender, and we've got other companies, and by the way, including those two companies, now knocking on our door. And I predict that we'll have a new contract signed soon with no subsidy from the council and a better management of those scooters. But if that's not possible, we won't bring them back at all. But we can't just have the old way where the streets were just littered with e-bikes, e-scooters, and we were bankrolling Uber. That can't happen, and we're not going to let it happen.
Okay, that's good to get an update on where that's at. And you also increased your investment in graffiti removal fairly dramatically. Has there been a visible difference as a result of that so far?
Yeah, it has. We're taking the graffiti down faster, but we've also got an opt-in rather than an opt-out. So in the past, if there was a business, let's say on Brunswick Street, Fitzroy, that was empty, private business, we had to get the permission of the landowner, of the landlord, to go and take that graffiti down. Now it's unless they write to us and say don't take it down, we can go and take it down. So that's actually led to a big change. So look, it's still not perfect. Don't get me wrong, but it's definitely been an improvement on the previous system.
Good to hear. So will you be mayor again next year, do you think?
No, I think this is Australia, not North Korea. Do you know what I mean? And I just think that it's good to. We've got a very, very talented group of councillors here at the City of Yarra, and I'm going to be nominating somebody else in November. I think it's good to share it around. I'm very, very proud of what I've done so far. There's still a few months to go, so I could mess it up, but hopefully not. But I think that if I was to go a second year, I would just be opening up to my political opponents that it's some type of, one party dictator, one person dictatorship. And so 100% I won't be standing next year.
Well, you're making every post a winner in your mayoral term. So thank you for being so generous with your time today. It's been great to meet you and chat with you about all of those Yarra issues.
Thanks, Chris.
Now, before I leave you today, registrations are open for the VLGA's Mayoral Leadership Program. It's in its second year and is designed to equip mayors and deputy mayors with the knowledge they need to lead their council effectively and with good governance at their foundation. It's mandatory for mayors and deputy mayors to undertake the training at the commencement of each mayoral term, and that must be completed by the 31st of December. The VLGA's Mayoral Leadership Program is a full-day program covering the roles and responsibilities of a mayor, the mayor-CEO relationship, how to chair a council meeting, managing difficult conversations, dispute resolution, and effective communications and media training. It's being held on Friday the 28th of November at the Monash Conference Centre in Collins Street, Melbourne. Places are filling fast, so head to the VLGA website now to find out more and to register. And if you book by the 1st of August, there's an additional 10% off the listed prices. That's all I have for you this week on VLGA Connect. Thanks for joining us, and thanks to Stephen Jolly, our special guest. We have much more for you in the weeks ahead. Tune in again next week on YouTube or listen to us on podcast. But for now, from VLGA Connect, goodbye.